The warning lights flashed red across the bridge of the Taeguk. Captain Dae-jung leaned forward in his chair, eyes fixed on the main screen. His ship had been exploring the outer edges of known space for 3 months without finding anything interesting. Now, something had finally appeared. "What am I looking at?" he asked. Lieutenant Hyun-woo tapped his console rapidly. "It's a distress signal, Captain. But the pattern doesn't match anything in our database. It's definitely not human." The words hung in the air. Not human. In all the years since humanity had learned to travel faster than light, they had never met another intelligent species. Earth had begun to accept that they were alone in the universe. Now, that might be changing. "Can you tell where it's coming from?" Dae-jung asked. "Yes, sir. About 2 million kilometers from our current position. The signal is weak, though. Whatever is sending it might not have much power left." Dae-jung didn't hesitate. "Set a course." Full speed, Dr. Hae-won entered the bridge just as the ship changed direction. She was the chief scientist aboard the Taeguk, responsible for studying any new life forms they might encounter. She had been waiting her whole career for a moment like this. "Is it true?" she asked. "Are we really receiving an alien signal?" "We're about to find out," Dae-jung replied. The Taeguk covered the distance in less than an hour. As they approached, the ship's sensors began picking up more details. There was a vessel ahead, drifting without power. Parts of its hull were torn open. Whoever was inside, they were in serious trouble. "I'm seeing life signs," Hyun-woo reported. "Faint, but they're there. At least 2 individuals. Maybe more." "Prepare a boarding team," Dae-jung ordered. "Hae-won, you're with me. Hyun-woo, you have the bridge." The boarding team suited up and crossed to the alien vessel through a sealed tunnel. Inside, the air was thin and cold. Emergency lights flickered weakly along the corridors. The ship's design was strange, with curved walls and controls that seemed built for hands different from human ones. They found the survivors in what looked like a medical bay. 2 beings lay on beds that seemed filled with some kind of liquid. Their skin was translucent and blue, like they were made partly of water. Large eyes watched the humans approach. One of them tried to speak, but only made gurgling sounds. Hae-won moved closer carefully. She pulled out a small device from her kit and placed it near the alien's head. It was a neural translator, something that could read brain patterns and convert them into language. The technology was experimental, designed for communicating with enhanced animals. No one had ever tried it with an actual alien species. The device beeped and hummed. Then, a voice emerged from its speakers. The words were strange at first, but became clearer as the translator learned. "Please, help us. They are coming." Hae-won looked at Dae-jung with wide eyes. "It's working. I can't believe it's actually working. Can you tell us who you are?" Dae-jung asked. The alien's large eyes focused on him. Through the translator, her voice came again. "I am Ela. I was a diplomat for my people. We are called Valorians. This is Rin, a scientist. We escaped, but our ship was damaged. We have been drifting for days." "Escaped from what?" Dae-jung asked. Ela's expression changed in a way that seemed like sadness. "From the Kravesh. They came to our world 6 months ago. They demanded we surrender everything. When we refused, they attacked. They killed so many. They didn't care about our cities, our culture, our history. They just wanted our world." Hae-won began scanning Ela with medical equipment. "Your body is going into shock. We need to get you proper treatment." "There is no time for me," Ela said weakly. "But there is time for my people, for all the people of the Concordat. That is why I sent the distress signal in all directions, hoping someone would hear." "What is the Concordat?" Dae-jung asked. "A union of peaceful species. 47 worlds joined together for trade and knowledge. We have existed for 3,000 years without major conflict. Our worlds are beautiful and safe. We have no weapons, no armies, no reason for such things. Hila's voice grew stronger with emotion. Then, the Kravesh arrived. World after world has fallen. Billions are dead or enslaved. We tried to fight, but we don't know how. Every time we face them in battle, we lose. They are stronger, faster, and they seem to enjoy causing pain. Rin, the younger Valorian, spoke for the first time. We discovered something while trying to understand why we are so weak against them. We studied the Kravesh, compared them to ourselves. Then we studied other species in the galaxy, including yours. You know about Earth? Haywan asked in surprise. We detected your radio signals decades ago. We studied your broadcasts, learned your languages, watched your history. Rin's eyes moved between the humans. Your planet is classified as a Class 12 death world. It is one of the most dangerous inhabited planets in the entire galaxy. Daejung frowned. Dangerous? Earth is our home. It's all we know. That is exactly the point, Hila said. My world, all Concordat worlds, we are what you would call garden paradises. Stable weather, no major predators, abundant food and water. We evolved in comfort and safety. Your species evolved in constant danger. You survived ice ages, mega predators, diseases, droughts, and competed with other intelligent species for resources. Your bodies are built to endure pain and injury. Your minds are built to handle fear and loss. You are what the galaxy calls Deathworlders. The room was quiet, except for the hum of medical equipment. Daejung tried to process what he was hearing. Everything that seemed normal about human existence, all the struggles and hardships throughout history, apparently made humanity unique among the stars. Why are you telling us this? He asked finally. Hila reached out with a thin arm. Her hand was webbed and delicate, like it had never needed to grip a weapon or build a shelter against harsh weather. Because we need help. The Concordat is dying. The Kravesh will not stop until they have conquered everything. We have nowhere else to turn. I tracked your signal and prayed you would find us in time. What exactly are you asking for? Daejung said carefully. I am asking you to fight. I am asking your species to teach us how to survive. I am asking Deathworlders to become our shield against a nightmare we cannot face alone. Tears formed in Hila's large eyes. I know. We have no right to ask this. We can offer you technology, resources, anything we have. But mostly, I am appealing to whatever sense of justice or compassion exists in beings strong enough to survive a world like yours. Daejung looked at Haywan, then back at Hila. His mind raced with implications. Earth's government didn't know about this contact. There were protocols, procedures, debates that should happen before making any decisions. But there were also billions of innocent beings dying while waiting for humanity to decide if they cared. He made his choice. Get these survivors to medical bay, full treatment. He tapped his communication device. Hyunwoo, prepare a message drone. I want you to take it back to Earth with all our data on the Valorians and this Kravesh threat. Include everything. Where will you be, Captain? Hyunwoo's voice came through. Daejung looked at Hila. Plot a course for Concordat space. I need to see this threat with my own eyes before I make any recommendations to Earth Command. Sir, that could take weeks. We'd be going far beyond our authorized exploration zone, Hyunwoo warned. I know. Do it anyway. Haewon touched his arm. Daejung, this is a huge decision. Sometimes the right choice is the one you make before anyone can talk you out of it, he replied. If what Hila says is true, we're looking at a genocide on a scale humanity has never seen. I need to know if we can help. And if we should. As medical teams moved the Valorian survivors to proper care facilities, Daejung stood alone on the damaged alien ship. He looked at the emergency lights flickering in the darkness and thought about what it meant to be strong. Strength without purpose was just potential. But strength used to protect those who couldn't protect themselves. That was something worth having. The Taeguk turned toward unknown space, carrying the first humans to witness what happened when peaceful civilizations met pure violence. What they would see there would change not just Earth's future, but the future of an entire galaxy. The journey to Concordat space took 12 days. During that time, Ela recovered enough to move around the ship with help. She spent hours with Dae Jung and his crew, teaching them about the galaxy they had never truly known existed. The Taeguk's medical officer, Ji Woo, worked constantly to keep both Valorians stable. She was a combat medic who had served in Earth's resource wars, used to treating injuries in difficult conditions. But the Valorian biology was unlike anything she had studied. Their bodies were fragile in ways that seemed impossible. A fall that would barely bruise a human could fracture their bones. Their skin tore easily. Even bright light caused them pain. How did your species survive evolution? Ji Woo asked one day while checking Ela's healing wounds. Our world had no major threats, Ela explained. The most dangerous creature on my planet is like what you call a cat. Small, gentle, eats insects. We never needed thick skin or strong bones. We never needed to fight or flee from predators. We simply grew and learned in safety. That sounds nice, Ji Woo said. But her tone suggested she couldn't really imagine it. It was paradise, Ela replied sadly. Until paradise met something it couldn't understand. Violence. Kraus. On the 8th day of travel, they began encountering Concordat ships. Most were refugees, fleeing from conquered worlds. The vessels were beautiful but impractical, designed for comfort rather than speed or defense. They were packed with families. Whole communities running from an enemy they couldn't fight. Dae Jung watched through the viewscreen as hundreds of these ships passed by. How many have fled their homes? Billions, Ela said quietly. Entire planets evacuated. But there is nowhere safe to go. The Kravesh keep advancing. Every month, another world falls. One of the Marine squad leaders aboard the Taeguk, a tough woman named Tae Yang, stood beside them. She had fought in the Arctic reclamation wars and had seen plenty of refugees before, but never on this scale. Do they have any military at all? She asked. We have defense forces, Ela said. Ships with weapons, trained personnel. But when the fighting starts, most of them surrender quickly. You see, to us, even one death is a tragedy that should be avoided at any cost. We cannot understand fighting when people are dying. It goes against everything our cultures believe. Tae Yang exchanged a look with Dae Jung. On Earth, military training taught soldiers to accept casualties as part of war. It was harsh, but necessary. A species that surrendered the moment people started dying would never win a battle against a determined enemy. On the 10th day, they reached the edge of a Concordat system under attack. The planet below was called Melodia, home to an insect-like species that lived in vast crystal cities. According to Ela, Melodia had never experienced war in its entire recorded history. That was about to change. Captain, I'm picking up multiple large vessels entering the system, Hyun-woo reported from his station. They match the profile Ela gave us for Kravesh warships. Take us in closer but keep us hidden, Dae Jung ordered. I want to observe. The Taeguk moved silently through the outer system, watching as the Kravesh fleet approached Melodia. There were dozens of ships, each one designed for one purpose: destruction. They were dark and angular, covered in weapons and armor. They looked like they had been built by a species that thought only about war. The Melodian defense fleet is moving to intercept, Hyun-woo said. 30 ships against the Kravish's 45. Dr. Haewon stood near Dae Jung, her face pale. She was a scientist, not a soldier. She had never wanted to see actual combat, but she needed to witness this, to understand what they were dealing with. The space battle began badly. The Concordat ships tried to form defensive positions, but they moved slowly and predictably. Their weapons fire was accurate, but weak. When the Kravesh returned fire, the Concordat shields failed quickly. Within minutes, 3 Concordat ships were destroyed. Then something happened that shocked every human watching. The remaining Concordat fleet stopped fighting and sent a surrender signal. They're giving up? Taeyang couldn't believe it. They barely tried. Taeyang, they lost 3 ships, Ela said, her voice full of grief. That means approximately 800 people are dead. To us, that is an unacceptable loss. Continuing to fight when the cost is so high seems insane. But if they surrender, everyone loses, Taeyang protested. Yes, Ela said simply. That is our weakness. We value individual lives more than victory. The Kravesh know this. They use it against us. The Kravesh fleet moved past the surrendered defenders and began bombarding the planet. Their weapons struck the crystal cities, shattering them into fragments. Then dropships launched from the warships, carrying Kravesh soldiers to the surface. I need to see this up close, Daejung said grimly. Hyunwoo, bring us into high orbit. Keep stealth systems at maximum. As they descended, they activated visual sensors that could see the surface clearly. What they witnessed made every human aboard the ship feel sick. The Kravesh were massive creatures, easily 3 meters tall and heavily muscled. They wore armor that made them look even more intimidating. But it wasn't their size that horrified the humans. It was their tactics. They broadcast the screams of captured Melodians through speakers, using psychological warfare against defenders who had never experienced such cruelty. They destroyed cultural monuments deliberately, burning things that had no military value. They seemed to enjoy the fear they created. Melodian civilians tried to flee, but they were slow and clumsy on their insect legs. The Kravesh caught them easily. Within hours, thousands were captured or killed. This isn't war, Jiwoo whispered. This is slaughter. A Melodian engineer named Pith had been aboard the Taeguk as a guide, helping them navigate concordate space. He watched the destruction of his people's homeworld with large compound eyes that couldn't produce tears. But his body language showed his devastation. Dr. Haewon sat with Pith in the observation room. We never prepared for this, Pith said in his clicking, translated voice. In all our history, we thought intelligence meant choosing peace. We believed that any species advanced enough to reach the stars would share our values. We were wrong. How did your people evolve? Haewon asked gently. What was your world like? Perfect, Pith said. Warm sun, gentle rains, abundant food. Our greatest natural threat was occasionally strong winds that damaged our hives. We built our civilization on cooperation and logic. Every problem could be solved through thought and discussion. Then the Kravesh came and showed us that some problems cannot be solved with words. Haewon pulled up information on her tablet. Earth was different. We had ice ages that nearly killed us, predators that hunted us, diseases that wiped out whole populations, droughts, floods, earthquakes, volcanoes. We survived not because we were the strongest, but because we could adapt and work together against constant threats. You evolved to survive, Pith said. We evolved to thrive. The galaxy favored us with kind worlds. But that kindness made us weak. The battle for Melodia lasted only 14 hours from start to finish. The Kravesh conquered an entire planet in less than a day. They took control of resources, captured hundreds of thousands of civilians for slave labor, and moved on. The efficiency was terrifying. Daejung called his senior staff to a meeting in the briefing room. Present were Hyunwoo, Haewon, Jiwoo, Taeyang, and Ela. We've seen enough, Daejung said. Earth needs to know about this. Not just reports and data, but the reality of what's happening here. Hyunwoo, I want you to prepare a complete record. Video, sensor logs, testimony from Ela, and Pith. Everything. What are you planning, Captain? Hyunwoo asked. I'm sending you back to Earth with all the evidence. You'll present it directly to Earth Command and the United Council. They need to see what we've seen. What about you? Hyunwoo's expression showed concern. I'm staying here. The Taeguk will continue observing and gathering information. If Earth decides to intervene, they'll need detailed intelligence on Kravesh tactics and capabilities. Taeyang leaned forward. Sir, with respect, I think you're planning more than just observation. Daejung met her eyes. What I'm planning is to be ready. If Earth commits forces to this fight, we'll need to know how to win. That means understanding our enemy completely. It also means proving to the Concordat that there's hope. Hope, Ela repeated the word. That is something we have lost. When you showed me recordings of human history, I saw something my people never developed. You call it resilience. The ability to suffer loss and keep fighting anyway. To face impossible odds and try anyway. We don't have that. Maybe you can learn it, Jiwoo said. We could teach you. Could you? Ela looked at each human in turn. Could you teach species that evolved in paradise how to survive hell? The question hung in the air. Daejung thought about it carefully. Teaching was one thing. But changing the fundamental psychology of entire species? That seemed almost impossible. I don't know, he admitted. But if Earth decides to help, we'll have to try. Because you're right about one thing. If the Concordat falls, eventually, the Kravesh will find Earth. When that happens, it'll be our families, our children, facing what we saw today. Better to stop them here, where we have allies, than wait until we're alone and surrounded. The next morning, Hyunwoo departed on a fast courier ship, carrying with him evidence that would shake Earth's entire understanding of the galaxy. Daejung watched him go, knowing that his message would start debates and arguments that would last weeks, but there was no time for debate. While politicians talked, people were dying. Daejung looked at the star charts, showing Concordat space, dozens of worlds, billions of lives, all depending on whether one species of Deathworlders would decide to care about the fate of strangers. What are you thinking? Haewon asked, standing beside him. I'm thinking that being strong means nothing if you only use that strength for yourself, Daejung replied. Our entire history. Humans fought each other. Maybe it's time we fought for someone else instead. In the distance, another Concordat world sent out a distress signal. The Kravesh were moving fast, conquering faster than anyone could flee. Time was running out for the galaxy's peaceful species. The only question now was whether Earth would answer the call before it was too late. The message from Hyunwoo reached Earth 23 days after he left the Taeguk. The response took another 18 days to arrive back at Concordat space. During that time, Taeguk, 3 more worlds fell to the Kravesh. Daejung and his crew watched helplessly, gathering data while people died. When the response finally came, it was better than anyone had hoped. Earth wasn't sending diplomats or observers. They were sending the first expeditionary fleet under the command of Admiral Sun Hee, a veteran of the Pacific Defense Wars. With her came the 7th Marine Division led by Colonel Jin Ho, a man famous for never losing a battle. Most surprising of all, Earth was sending Dr. Yu Na, a military psychologist who specialized in training soldiers to handle extreme stress. The fleet consisted of 40 warships, smaller than the Kravesh fleets, but built with decades of human warfare experience. More importantly, they brought 20,000 Marines, trained and ready for ground combat. When the human fleet arrived at Velar Prime, the Valorian homeworld, they found a system under siege. 15 Kravesh warships surrounded the planet, preparing for their final assault. The Valorian Defense Force had already surrendered in orbit. Only the planet's surface defenses remained, and those were failing. Admiral Sun Hee studied the tactical display. She was a small woman, with gray hair and eyes that had seen too many battles. Beside her stood Daejung, who had been promoted to Commodore and given command of joint operations. They expect us to fight them in space, Sun Hee said. Standard fleet engagement, overwhelming firepower. That's what they're used to. What do you recommend? Daejung asked. We don't fight their way, we fight ours. She turned to her communications officer. Send a message to the Kravesh fleet. Tell them if they want this system, they'll have to take it from us on the ground. The Kravesh commander responded with what sounded like laughter through the translator. He agreed immediately, confident that any ground force would be crushed by his superior warriors. He pulled most of his fleet back and sent down dropships carrying 10,000 Kravesh soldiers. They took the bait, Sun He said with satisfaction. Now let's show them what a mistake that was. Colonel Jin Ho commanded the ground forces from a command post near Velar Prime's capital city. He was a tall man, with scars on his face from old battles. When he smiled, which wasn't often, it made people nervous. "Marines!" His voice boomed across the communication channels. "The enemy thinks they're stronger than us. They're bigger, tougher, and meaner. They're probably right about all of that. But there's one thing they've never faced. They've never fought an enemy that doesn't quit. Show them what humans do when someone threatens innocent people. Show them why we're called Deathworlders." The Marines cheered, a sound that echoed across the battlefield. Beside them stood Valorian militia, trained by humans in the past few weeks. They were nervous and frightened, but they held their positions. Dr. Hay-1 moved among them, offering encouragement. "You don't have to be strong," she told a young Valorian soldier who was shaking with fear. "You just have to try. That's all anyone can ask." The Kravesh landed in waves, their dropships thundering down from the sky. When they emerged, they were even more massive than the videos had shown. Each warrior stood over 3 meters tall, covered in thick armor, and carrying weapons that could punch through walls. They charged forward in a straight line, confident and aggressive. That's when they learned their first lesson about fighting humans. The charge ran straight into a minefield. Explosions tore through the Kravesh front line. Those who survived the mines found themselves in a carefully prepared kill zone. Human Marines fired from concealed positions, using the terrain for cover. Every shot was aimed and controlled. No wasted ammunition. No panic fire. The Kravesh had never encountered this. Their previous enemies either met them in open battle or fled. Humans did neither. They used the ground itself as a weapon. Taeyang led her squad in a flanking maneuver, moving fast through buildings and alleys. They struck at the Kravesh from an unexpected angle, then disappeared before the enemy could respond. When the Kravesh pursued, they ran into another prepared position where Jiwoo and her medical team had set up in a fortified building, with clear firing lanes and backup escape routes. The battle raged for hours. The Kravesh kept expecting the humans to break and run. Instead, wounded Marines continued fighting from cover. When positions became untenable, humans retreated in good order to the next defensive line, forcing the Kravesh to advance through another kill zone. One Kravesh warrior managed to break through to a human position. He grabbed a Marine and threw him against a wall hard enough to break bones. The Kravesh expected the human to be finished. Instead, the Marine pulled out a pistol with his other hand and shot the Kravesh 3 times in the face before passing out from pain. This confused the Kravesh more than anything. Their previous enemies stopped fighting when seriously injured. Humans seemed to fight harder when wounded, as if pain made them more dangerous instead of less. A critical moment came at the Mirala Bridge, a structure spanning a deep river that led directly to the capital city. If the Kravesh crossed it, they would reach civilian populations. Taeyang and her platoon were ordered to hold it. "How long do we need to hold?" she asked Jinho over the radio. 36 hours, came the reply. "Can you do it?" Taeyang looked at her 40 Marines and the 200 Valorian militia they had trained, against probably 2,000 Kravesh heading their way. On Earth, she would have said no. But this wasn't Earth, and these weren't human enemies. "We'll hold," she promised. The defense of Mirala Bridge became legendary. For 36 hours, Taeyang's force held against overwhelming numbers. They used every trick in the human military handbook: ambush attacks, false retreats, fighting from buildings, and then collapsing those buildings on pursuing enemies. They booby-trapped their own wounded positions, something the Kravesh had never seen and didn't expect. The Valorian militia learned fast. They couldn't match human endurance or pain tolerance, but they could learn to shoot accurately and think tactically. One young Valorian named Krill saved 3 human Marines by dragging them to cover while under fire, despite being wounded himself. The Kravesh threw everything at the bridge. They tried frontal assaults, flanking maneuvers, even orbital bombardment, but every time they thought they had broken through, they found another layer of defense waiting. On the second day, Taeyang was hit by shrapnel. It tore through her armor and lodged in her side. Jiwoo rushed over to treat her. "You need to evacuate," Jiwoo said, seeing the extent of the injury. "Not until the 36 hours are up," Taeyang replied through gritted teeth. "Besides, what kind of example would I set? Get back to your patients." Taeyang, the Kravesh commander, watching from his ship, couldn't understand what he was seeing. His warriors were superior in every physical way. They had better weapons, better armor, more numbers. Yet somehow these smaller, weaker creatures were winning. What he didn't understand was that war isn't just about strength. It's about will. The Kravesh fought because it was their nature. Humans fought because they chose to. That made all the difference. When the 36 hours ended, reinforcements arrived. The bridge still stood. Of the original 40 Marines, 18 were still combat capable. Of the 200 Valorian militia, 73 survived. They had held against impossible odds, but the cost was clear. The Kravesh had lost over 1,500 warriors at that one location. For the first time in their campaign against the Concordat, they had been stopped. The Kravesh commander made a decision that shocked everyone. He ordered a full retreat. In orbit, Admiral Sun Hee watched the Kravesh fleet beginning to withdraw. She said with satisfaction, "They've never faced an enemy that makes them pay in blood for every meter of ground." The battle for Valar Prime was over. The planet was saved, but the victory came at a heavy price. 300 human Marines were dead, 800 more wounded. The Valorian losses were even higher. But the planet stood free. Daejung stood in a hospital where wounded were being treated. Human and Valorian medics worked side by side, using both species' medical technology. A Concordat doctor approached him. Her expression troubled. "I have been healing injuries for 40 years, she said. "I have never seen anyone fight with a punctured lung, broken ribs, and massive blood loss. Yet I just treated 3 human soldiers who did exactly that. How is this possible? I was not come to me. 10 close bia. I was not come to me. I have never seen anyone's soldiers. Adrenaline," Daejung explained. "Pain suppression. Training. But mostly, it's knowing that if we don't fight, people we care about will die. That knowledge lets us push through things that should be impossible." "Is this what it means to be a Deathworlder?" the doctor asked. "To endure what would kill others?" "No," Daejung said, watching Jiwoo carefully treat a young Valorian soldier. "Being a Deathworlder means surviving on a planet that tried to kill you every day. But being human? That means choosing to use that survival instinct to protect others instead of just yourself." In the Concordat Council chambers, Ela stood before the assembled representatives of 47 worlds. She held herself straight despite her injuries, determined to deliver her message. "I asked these humans for help because I had no other choice," she said. "I did not ask for them to die for us. But they did, anyway. 300 of their people are dead so that our world could live. They bled for strangers they had known for less than 2 months. I asked them why they did this, and their captain told me something I will never forget. He said, 'Strength without compassion is just cruelty. We're strong, so we have a duty to protect those who aren't.'" The chamber was silent. Finally, an elderly representative spoke. "What do they want in return?" "They want us to learn," Ela said. "Not to become like them, but to develop our own strength. They are offering to train our people, to teach us how to defend ourselves, but they need our help too. They cannot fight this war alone. Their species numbers only 8 billion. The Concordat spans trillions. If we all stand together, we can stop the Kravesh. The vote was unanimous. The Concordat would fight, with humans as their teachers and shield. When Daejung heard the news, he felt both relief and worry. Relief that they would have help. Worry about what that help would cost in lives. He stood on the surface of Velar Prime, looking up at two suns setting over a world that would have fallen without intervention. Taeyang, bandaged but walking, came to stand beside him. "We did good today, sir. We survived today," he corrected. "The war is just beginning. The Kravesh will come back with more ships, more warriors, and better tactics. Next time won't be so easy." "Nothing worth doing is easy," Taeyang said, repeating an old human saying. "But that's what makes it worth doing." 6 months had passed since the Battle of Velar Prime. The war had settled into a brutal pattern of attack and defense across 12 Concordat worlds. Human forces held the lines while training Concordat species to fight their own battles. But the cost was becoming impossible to ignore. Commodore Daejung stood in the command center on a space station orbiting New Melodia. His hair had more gray in it now. The lines on his face were deeper. Around him, officers from both human and Concordat forces worked together, sharing information and coordinating defenses. A human logistics officer named Sang Min approached with yet another concerning report. "Sir, we're running low on medical supplies again. The convoy from Earth won't arrive for another 3 weeks. If we get into a major engagement before then..." "I know." Daejung cut him off gently. "Do what you can with what we have. Trade with Concordat medical facilities, if necessary. Their medicines don't work well on human biology, sir. Then we'll make do." Daejung rubbed his tired eyes. "What about ammunition?" "Kree. Daejung. 40% capacity. Food supplies at 60%. Replacement parts for ships at 30% and dropping." Sang Min hesitated. "Sir, we're stretched too thin. 8 billion humans trying to defend trillions across dozens of worlds. The math doesn't work." "The math never works in war," Daejung replied. "You just do your best anyway." A pilot named Da-un entered the command center, still wearing her flight suit. She had just returned from a supply run through Kravesh-controlled space. A journey that should have been impossible. She made it look routine. "Delivery complete," she reported. "Medicine and ammunition to the garrison. On Helios 3. They were down to their last day of supplies." "Any trouble?" Daejung asked. 3 Kravesh patrol ships tried to intercept. Lost them in the asteroid field near the 4th moon. She said it casually, as if dodging enemy warships was nothing special. For her, it probably wasn't anymore. Dr. Yuna, the military psychologist, entered next. She had been working with both human soldiers and Concordat trainees, trying to prepare minds for the reality of warfare. Her job was perhaps the hardest of all. "I need to talk to you about the training program," she said to Daejung. "We're losing too many Concordat trainees to psychological breaks. They see combat once, and their minds shut down. The trauma is overwhelming for them." Unquote. "Can anything be done?" Daejung asked. "I'm trying a new approach. Instead of training them to fight like humans, I'm teaching them to support human fighters. Logistics, medical support, intelligence gathering. Jobs that contribute to victory without requiring them to personally kill. It's working better. But it still leaves humans doing most of the actual fighting," Daejung observed. "Yes," Yuna admitted. "I don't have a solution for that. Their evolution simply didn't prepare them for sustained violence. We can train them, but we can't change millions of years of peaceful development in a few months." The conversation was interrupted by an alert. A Kravesh force was approaching one of the defense lines. Colonel Jinho's voice came through the communication system. "All forces to battle stations. Kravesh fleet detected, heading for our position at the Helios system. Estimated strength, 30 warships, probably carrying 10,000 ground troops. We have 18 ships and 6,000 marines. This will be difficult. Dae-jung closed his eyes briefly. Another battle. More casualties. More families on Earth receiving notification that their loved ones had died light years from home for people they had never met. Prepare for engagement, he ordered. The battle for Helios system lasted 3 days. The humans won, but the cost was severe. 4 warships destroyed, 700 Marines dead, 2,000 wounded. The Kravesh losses were higher, but they had more resources to replace them. In the medical bay afterward, Ji-woo worked without stopping for 18 hours straight. Her hands moved automatically, treating wounds that ranged from minor to catastrophic. A young Marine, barely 20 years old, held her hand while she sealed a wound in his chest. "Will I be able to fight again?" he asked. "Maybe," Ji-woo said honestly. "But you need to recover first." "There's no time," the Marine said. "The next attack could come tomorrow. They need everyone." Ji-woo wanted to tell him that his health was more important than getting back to combat. But she knew he was right. They did need everyone. The human forces were exhausted, running on determination alone. After the battle, Tae-young gathered her surviving squad members. Of the 40 Marines she had commanded at Mirala Bridge, only 12 were still in her unit. The rest were dead, wounded, or transferred to other units to fill gaps. "Listen up," she said to her squad. "We've been fighting for 6 months. Every one of you has earned a rest. High Command is offering rotation back to Earth for anyone who's been in combat for more than 4 months. That's all of us. If you want to go home, no one will think less of you." The 12 Marines looked at each other. Then, one by one, they shook their heads. "With respect, Sergeant," one said. "If we go home, who protects these people?" Tae-young felt pride and sadness at the same time. "Dismissed. Get some rest. We move out tomorrow." That evening, something unexpected happened. A Kravesh shuttle approached one of the human-controlled stations, broadcasting a surrender signal. It was so unusual that Admiral Sun-hee initially thought it was a trap. But sensors showed only one life sign aboard. When the Kravesh emerged from the shuttle, every weapon on the station was pointed at him. He was massive and intimidating, but he held his arms up in a gesture of peace. Through a translator, he spoke. "My name is Zed. I am a warrior of the Kravesh Empire. I wish to defect." They brought him to a secure interrogation room. Dae-jung and Sun-hee questioned him while armed guards watched carefully. Dr. Yuna observed from behind protective glass, analyzing his behavior. "Why would a Kravesh warrior want to defect?" Dae-jung asked. "Because I have seen something I did not believe possible," Zed replied. "I have seen prey fight like predators. I have seen weakness become strength. I have watched humans die protecting those they barely know. This is not how the galaxy works. This is not how war works. But you do it anyway." "That doesn't explain why you're here," Sun-hee said coldly. "My people were created," Zed said. "Long ago, an empire called the Architects made us as biological weapons. They designed us for war, programmed aggression into our genes, built our entire culture around conquest. Then the Architects fell, and we were left with only one purpose: to conquer. We have done this for 3,000 years because we know nothing else." "So, you're victims too?" Dae-jung said skeptically. "No," Zed said firmly. "We chose to continue what we were made for. But seeing humans fight has made me question that choice. You were not made for war. You adapted to it. You endure it. But you also show mercy to enemies and compassion to the weak. These are not things we understand." "I want to understand." "Information," Sun-hee said bluntly. "You must have information we can use." "I do," Zed agreed. "I can tell you about Kravesh supply lines, command structure, ship capabilities, and battle tactics. But I offer you something more valuable. I can tell you our weakness. What weakness? Daejung leaned forward. Fear, Zeed said. We have never felt it before. We were apex predators in a galaxy of prey. But humans made us feel afraid. You hurt us. You make us bleed. You refuse to break when we expect you to. This is new to us, and we do not know how to process it. Some Kravesh warriors are becoming hesitant in battle. Some are questioning orders. The Empire is pretending this is not happening, but it is. After Zeed was taken away, Daejung and Sun Hee discussed the implications. If what he says is true, we have an opportunity, Sun Hee said. We can't match them in numbers or strength, but we can break their will. Psychological warfare, Daejung agreed. Make every battle cost them more than they're willing to pay. That means more fighting. More human casualties. Sun Hee looked tired. Daejung, I have to tell you something. Earth's government is debating withdrawal. The public is growing war-weary. We've lost 4,000 soldiers in 6 months. That may not sound like much, but every one of them has families, communities, people who question whether this war is worth it. Do you think we should withdraw? Daejung asked. Sun Hee was quiet for a long moment. No, because if we leave now, the Concordat falls. And eventually, the Kravesh will reach Earth. Better to fight them here with allies than alone and unprepared. But I understand the arguments against it. We're not fighting for resources or territory. We're fighting for strangers on the other side of the galaxy. That's a hard thing to ask soldiers to die for. In a hospital on Earth, a young Marine lay recovering from injuries sustained on Helios 3. Her name was Yuri, and she had lost a leg in the battle. When Daejung visited her via video call, she asked him a question that many were asking. Sir, why are we dying for aliens we just met? Daejung thought about how to answer. My grandfather survived the California drought wars because strangers helped his family when they had nothing. He used to tell me that humanity survived as long as it has because we help each other, even when it's hard. These aliens aren't strangers anymore. They're people who need help, and we're strong enough to give it. That makes it our responsibility. We, too. But how many humans have to die before we've done enough? Yuri asked. I don't know, Daejung admitted. I wish I had a better answer. But I know this. Every person we save, every world we protect, that matters. Your sacrifice matters. The question isn't whether it's worth it. The question is whether we're the kind of species that turns away when people need help, just because helping is hard. After the call ended, Daejung sat alone in his quarters. He thought about all the soldiers who had died under his command. He thought about families on Earth, grieving for children who had gone to fight in a war that didn't directly threaten Earth. He thought about the Concordat species learning to be warriors against every instinct their evolution had given them. The war was far from over. Intelligence suggested the Kravesh were gathering forces for something big. Earth was debating whether to send more ships or recall the ones already deployed. The Concordat was learning to fight, but slowly, painfully slowly. Daejung looked at a photo on his desk. It showed the crew of the Taeguk before all this started. They looked so young and hopeful, excited about exploring the galaxy. Now they were at war, and that innocence was gone forever. But they were still fighting. Humans and aliens side by side, learning from each other, protecting each other. If nothing else, that was worth something. That meant something. Tomorrow would bring new battles. Tonight, Daejung allowed himself to hope that somehow they would find a way to win. Not just the war, actually when helpful, but a future where strength protected weakness instead of exploiting it. The intelligence came from 3 different sources on the same day, which meant it was almost certainly true. The Kravesh were gathering their entire fleet for one massive assault. The target was not a Concordat world. It was Earth. Commodore Daejung stood before the emergency council meeting, representing human military forces. Around him sat representatives from all 47 concordate worlds. The news had shocked everyone. "Why Earth?" asked a Valorian counselor. "Your homeworld is far from the war zone. Why would they ignore our worlds to attack yours?" "Because they're smart," Admiral Sun He replied. She stood next to Daejung, her expression grim. "They've realized humans are the only real threat. Take out Earth, and the rest of you will fall easily. It's brutal, but strategically sound." "How long do we have?" Ela asked. She had become one of the most important voices in the Concordat, respected for her experience with humans. 40 days, Daejung said. "Maybe less if they push hard. Our intelligence suggests they're bringing 300 warships. It's the largest fleet they've ever assembled." The room erupted in worried conversation. Earth's home defenses were strong, but not strong enough to stop that kind of force. And the human fleet was scattered across a dozen systems, protecting Concordat worlds. An elderly Melodian counselor spoke up. "No," Ela said sharply. "We will not understand, because that is not what we will allow to happen." She stood, her translucent blue form catching the light. "For 8 months, humans have bled for us. They have died for our worlds, for our families, for people they did not know. Now their world faces destruction. And you suggest they abandon us to save themselves? What kind of creatures would we be if we allowed that?" "What are you proposing?" asked a Crevonian representative. "We fight," Ela said simply. "Not just humans. All of us. Every ship, every soldier, every resource the Concordat has. We bring the battle to the Kravesh before they can attack Earth." "You're talking about an offensive operation," another counselor said nervously. "We've never launched an offensive in our entire history." "Then it's time we learned," Ela replied. "Humans taught us that the shield and the sword are the same thing. We've been using them as shields. Now, we learn to use them as swords." The vote was not unanimous. Some worlds still hesitated at the idea of aggressive warfare. But the majority agreed. For the first time in Concordat history, they would launch an attack. The combined fleet that assembled over the next 2 weeks was the largest in galactic history. 300 human warships, pulled from every defensive position, 800 Concordat vessels, ranging from repurposed cargo ships to actual military craft. 1,000 ships total, carrying 100,000 human marines and 500,000 Concordat support personnel. Admiral Sun He commanded the fleet from her flagship. Colonel Jin Ho led the ground forces. Daejung served as the bridge between human and Concordat strategies. Dr. Yuna worked desperately to prepare Concordat crews for the psychological shock of offensive warfare. The target was the Kravesh Nexus, a massive space station where their fleet was gathering. Take it out, and the attack on Earth would be impossible. But it was also one of the most heavily defended locations in Kravesh space. On the day before departure, Daejung visited the Marine barracks. He found Taeyang running her squad through one final training exercise. She had been promoted to lieutenant after her heroics at Mirala Bridge, but she still preferred working directly with her troops. "Ready for this?" Daejung asked her. "No, sir," Taeyang replied honestly. "This is the biggest operation any of us have ever attempted. We're taking the fight to their home territory. If we fail, everyone dies. If we succeed, a lot of us still die. Nobody's ready for that. But you'll do it anyway." "Yes, sir. Because that's what we do." She paused. "Sir, can I ask you something? Do you think we'll win?" Daejung considered lying, offering false certainty. But Taeyang deserved honesty. "I think we have a chance. The Kravesh have never faced a coordinated attack from this many ships. They've never had to defend instead of attack. We have surprise and desperation on our side. Will that be enough? I don't know. But I know we have to try." The fleet departed in waves, jumping through space toward the Kravesh Nexus. The journey took 5 days. During that time, human and concordate crews worked together, sharing knowledge and building trust. Concordat engineers improved human ships' efficiency. Human tacticians taught Concordat captains defensive maneuvers. On the ship carrying Concordat forces, Dr. Hay-1 worked in the medical bay, preparing for casualties. A young Valorian medic, named Sela, worked beside her. "I am frightened," Sela admitted. "My hands shake when I think about what we're going to face." "Fear is normal," Hay-1 replied. "Courage isn't the absence of fear. It's doing what needs to be done despite being afraid. How do humans manage it? How do you fight when you're scared? We focus on what we're protecting instead of what we're afraid of." Every soldier I've treated tells me the same thing. They don't fight for victory or glory. They fight for the person next to them, for families back home, for people who depend on them. That makes the fear manageable. When the fleet arrived at the Kravesh Nexus, they found the enemy exactly as intelligence had predicted. 300 warships, thousands of fighters, defensive platforms bristling with weapons. The space station itself was massive, capable of housing 1 million Kravesh warriors. "All ships," Admiral Sun He broadcast. "Remember the plan. Human vessels form the spearhead. Concordat ships provide support, fire, and electronic warfare. We hit them hard, we hit them fast, and we don't stop until that station is ours. Good luck to all of us." The battle began with a coordinated assault from 3 directions. Human warships drove straight at the enemy lines, absorbing damage while Concordat vessels disrupted Kravesh communications and targeting systems. It was chaos and violence on a scale the galaxy had never seen. Da-Un flew her fighter through impossible situations, her reflexes and training allowing her to survive when sensors said she shouldn't. She led a squadron that destroyed a Kravesh capital ship's engine core, crippling it. In space, Jiwoo worked in a medical ship that took damage from enemy fire. Half the lights went out. Wounded from both species poured in. She moved between patients, doing everything possible to keep them alive while the ship shook from weapons impacts. The space battle raged for 6 hours. Ships died on both sides. The vacuum filled with debris and frozen bodies. But slowly, the human Concordat fleet pushed forward, forcing the Kravesh into defensive positions they had never prepared for. "Landing teams, prepare for deployment," Jinho ordered. "We're taking that station." The assault on the Kravesh Nexus was brutal. Kravesh defenders fought desperately in their own territory. Humans and trained Concordat troops pushed forward through corridors designed for creatures twice their size. Taeyang led her squad in capturing a critical shield generator. Zed, the Kravesh defector, fought alongside humans, his knowledge of station layout proving invaluable. In one corridor, Taeyang's squad ran into a Kravesh commander with 30 warriors. The odds were impossible. But Krill, the young Valorian who had fought at Mirala Bridge, had an idea. He and other Concordat troops created a distraction while humans flanked the position. It was the first time Concordat forces successfully executed complex tactics without human direction. The battle moved toward the station's command center. Commodore Daejung led a strike team personally, something admirals weren't supposed to do. But this was different. This was the moment that would determine everything. They reached the command center to find the Kravesh war leader waiting. He was the largest Kravesh anyone had seen, covered in scars from countless battles. When he saw Daejung, he laughed. "A human commander," the war leader said through the translator. "So small. So weak. How did creatures like you cause us so much trouble?" "Because we know something you don't," Daejung replied, pulling out his weapon. "What could you possibly teach me about war? That sometimes the strongest thing you can do is fight for someone else instead of yourself." The war leader roared and charged. The fight was savage. Daejung was outmatched in strength and size, but he used speed and tactics. When the war leader swung, Daejung dodged. When the war leader charged, Daejung redirected the momentum. He fought through pain, through exhaustion, using every trick learned from a lifetime of human warfare. Finally, battered and bleeding, Daejung found an opening. His weapon found its mark. The war leader fell. With their leader dead and their command center captured, the Kravesh fleet faced a choice they had never encountered: surrender or total destruction. For several tense minutes, nothing happened. Then, slowly, Kravesh ships began standing down. The battle was over. The cost was staggering. 40 human warships destroyed, 4,000 Marines dead, 200 Concordat vessels lost, 30,000 Concordat personnel killed. But the Kravesh nexus was theirs, and the threat to Earth was eliminated. In the command center, Daejung collapsed from his injuries. Medical teams rushed to save him. Dr. Haewon worked on him personally, using both human and Concordat technology to heal wounds that should have been fatal. He woke 3 days later in a medical bay. "Did we win?" he asked weakly. "We won," she confirmed. "The Kravesh are suing for peace. Without their nexus and their leadership, their fleet scattered. It's over." "How many did we lose?" "Too many," Haewon said quietly. "But fewer than would have died if Earth had fallen, or if the Concordat had been enslaved. Your sacrifice meant something." Over the following weeks, peace negotiations began. Dr. Yuna led the psychological assessment of Kravesh culture. Her conclusion was both disturbing and hopeful. The Kravesh were capable of change, but it would take time and purpose. The solution was radical. The Kravesh would become the Concordat's peacekeepers and defenders. Still warriors, but with a new mission: protecting the weak instead of conquering them. It would take generations to fully change their culture, but it was a beginning. 6 months after the Battle of the Nexus, a memorial was built on Velar Prime. It stretched for kilometers, covered with the names of every human and Concordat citizen who had died in the war. Daejung stood before it, recovered but forever marked by his injuries. Ela stood beside him, looking at the thousands of names etched in stone. "Your people could have hidden," she said quietly. "Could have let us fall and face the Kravesh later, better prepared. Why didn't you?" Daejung was quiet for a moment, thinking about all the soldiers he had commanded, all the faces he would never see again. Because someone who can help and doesn't is just as guilty as someone who causes harm. We're strong. That means we have a duty to protect those who aren't. In Valorian, Ela said, the word for shield is the same as the word for friend. When you came to help us, you called yourselves our shield. I think you chose the right word. We learned something too, Daejung said. Humans spent our entire history fighting each other. Maybe we needed something like this to remind us what strength is really for. Not conquest or dominance. Protection. Number one. Below them, mixed groups of humans and Concordat citizens walked together. Human soldiers taught Concordat defense forces. Concordat engineers improved human technology. Children of both species played together, not knowing a time before first contact. Earth had changed. The war had cost thousands of lives, but it had also given humanity purpose beyond their own survival. They were no longer alone in the galaxy. They were teachers, protectors, friends to species that had once faced extinction. The Concordat had changed too. They learned that peace required the willingness to fight for it, that survival sometimes meant accepting casualties, that strength and compassion were not opposites, but partners. As Daejung walked away from the memorial, he thought about the future. There would be other threats, other challenges, but now the galaxy had something it never had before. Species that had learned to protect each other, that saw strength as a responsibility rather than an opportunity. The Kravesh taught the galaxy about conquest. Humans taught it about sacrifice. Together, they would build something new. Not perfect, but better. A galaxy where the strong protected the weak, where different species worked together, where war was a last resort rather than a first response. Looking up at the two sons of Velar Prime, Daejung smiled. His grandfather would have been proud. Humanity had survived the harsh crucible of Earth, had grown strong in the face of constant threats, and when given the choice, they had used that strength not to dominate, but to shield others from darkness. That was what it meant to be a Deathworlder. Not just surviving, but helping others survive too. That was the lesson Earth gave to the galaxy, and it was a lesson that would echo through the stars for generations to come.